Lee Richardson presenting, and he's going to talk about being a superhero on day one with ABP framework, which I'm super excited about, partially because we use ABP a lot over at Momentum 3 where I work. And it's an incredibly capable solution, turnkey for a lot of things. And it's kind of you used to get this great template, and now in Visual Studio, and this is like the next level version of that template. It's just insane. So I can't wait to hear more about what he is going to have to say, and the future of ABP and so forth. And with that, I'll leave it to you, Lee. Thank you, and go for it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me out. So yeah, I'm gonna try and share a screen first. Let's see if I can do that.
You should be able to. I made you a presenter. Awesome.
Cool. Does that look good? I can't quite see what it looks like on your end.
Yeah, I think it looks pretty good on our end. I'm going to expand the screen a little bit, but yeah, it looks, can everyone see it okay? All right. I'll dim the lights a little bit too.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone. So yeah, just a little bit about myself first. My name is Lee Richardson, Microsoft MVP. I run the caparea.net user group. I blog and I YouTube and I'm on LinkedIn and Blue Sky, and you're welcome to connect up with me. I work for an awesome employer, InfernoRed Technology. If you are looking for work, as I heard two of you are, feel free to reach out to me afterwards. Sometimes there's a good match there. And if you're looking to build software, they do great software as well. So I've been using ABP. Actually, I've been using the first version of it for a very long time, and I had the honor of Halil Ibrahim Kalkin. Actually, I reviewed his book, and so I read an entire book to make sure I'm up to date on all this stuff, and I got my name in print, which was super exciting. I would not recommend it. It is a lot of work. So, all right, let me get right into the meat of ABP. So what is it, first of all? It is, in my mind, two things. It is first and foremost a one-time code generator. So it generates one of four different front ends for you. You get to choose which front end you want, and it generates a back end, and it gets everything to just work together right out of the box on the first day of your project. So you can choose either Angular, ASP.NET Core MVC Razor, or Blazor Server or Blazor WebAssembly as your four front-end options. And then on the back end, it's .NET Core. Additionally, it is also a framework. So if you're using Angular, there's an NPM package that comes in. If you're using Blazor, I think there's a NuGet package. And on the back end, there is definitely a NuGet package. And so they are frequently releasing bug fixes and updates. And so you are taking a dependency on ABP as well as the regular .NET Core code that you would otherwise use. So that's what I think of as the core of what it is. It's only for new projects. So if you've got an existing project, it's not really going to help you out very much. And what it gives you, first of all, like right off the bat, 100 end-to-end, 100% working site with a whole bunch of foundational features. And so when I say foundational features, I mean it has role and user management built in, and multi-tenancy, and sorting, and authentication, and dependency injection all set up, logging all set up for you. A whole bunch of foundational features. I'll get into all of those in a little bit. And it comes up with a whole bunch of best practices as well. So if it gives you a repository pattern, it gives you integration tests that you can build they build out a database, and then you can test out your queries with them. So that's kind of a very brief overview of it. And I think it's useful just to talk about the history just a little bit so you know where it's coming from. It was originally a technology called ASP.NET Boilerplate, and that was created a very long time ago. If you've heard of ASP.NET Boilerplate, actually, I'm curious. Can I poll the audience? Can I get a sense of how many people have heard of ASP.NET Boilerplate or ABP?
There are, well, raise your hand. Keep your hands up though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7. Nope. 6 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, around double that.
Okay. Cool. So, okay, so a lot of people have heard of this. Yeah, it was, and still is to this day, a great technology. There had been ASP.NET Boilerplate and then ASP.NET Zero, which was the paid product. I think it's always useful to know how companies make their money. So just to make sure that you are not the product. And in this case, the equivalents are ABP Framework is the free version, and then the commercial version is ABP Commercial. So, and then together, the both of those are abp.io. So if I say abp.io, I'm talking about both of those. So why did they do this? 2013 was when ASP.NET Boilerplate was introduced, and it was before Angular 2, was Angular.js, I guess. And so they kept it going, and they kept updating it, but there was a point at which it was just getting really long in the tooth. And so they released ABP in 2019 with .NET Core, so they rewrote it all for .NET Core, and that is where ABP came in. So it's all based on much more modern technologies. If you do happen to need to migrate, there's a migration guide here I linked to in the bottom, but at this point, ABP has been around long enough that you probably don't need that. It is open source, and they have an enormous number of stars, 13.7 thousand stars, and they have people contributing back constantly. It's a really popular project. So if you're at all concerned about hooking your wagon to something that may not be around, it is liable to be around for a good long time. And similarly, it's downloaded a lot. If you go take a look at the NuGet packages, you'll see 20 million downloads, and the latest version is 10.2. For a while, I had been telling people that it was part of the .NET Foundation, but I did some more research recently, and I realized actually it's ASP.NET Boilerplate that's part of the .NET Foundation, and ABP is not officially. So, but they have an interesting relationship with the .NET Foundation. The .NET Foundation does frequently post about ABP.io, and they host Halil and various other speakers from ABP at like the .NET Conf. So if you ever attend the .NET Conf, you're going to see talks about ABP. So I'm not sure whether I can say they're actually officially a part of the .NET framework, but they're definitely .NET Foundation adjacent. Yeah, so real quick, I probably ought to talk about their pricing. I don't have any stake in this. I don't really care, but just so you know, there's the free version of it, which is perfectly sufficient for everything you need. And then if you are interested in giving the money, they give you a bunch of additional UI. There's a bunch of additional UI frameworks. There's a really neat ability to build out your CRUD. If you're doing forms over data kind of stuff, you can build out your fields and your entities and your relationships, and then it just builds everything out really fast, which is really nice. And there's a whole bunch of extra features that come with those. Yeah, the themes here, you get the Lepton X theme, which I'll be showing later as part of the free one. And these ones are the ones you get, so you start paying money, then you get some of these other fancier, prettier themes. And yeah, the ABP Suite is what I was telling you about. That's the tool which allows you to build out entities and relationships and stuff like that. And then it does the code generation for that. There is, here's a bunch of features that also come with ABP Commercial. It's like a, payment, chat, file management. You can build all these things yourself. So it's just about saving time. Social logins, email confirmations, profile pictures, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Let's get into the meat of it. Let's get into the benefits. So first of all, I think of it in terms of like what you're getting right out of the box day one, what you're getting in terms of, after about a week, and what you're getting after a month or a couple months or a year or whatever. So right off the bat, you're going to get a site, and I could actually demo this here in just a second, but this site is perfectly sufficient. It gives you users, it gives you roles, it gives you the ability to edit them. And you can also, if you click on the generate a sample book thing, then it gives you like the CRUD for a book. And so that gives you a sort of a sample starting point which I will show in just a second. So day one, get up to speed fast. I don't know if now's a good time for a demo or, yeah, I mean, let's go ahead and just do a demo. So this is this is ABP Studio here. So the way you normally get started, you can either use the ABP CLI and do it all at the CLI, or they have this fancy tool that you can download from the Windows Store. So I'm going to show you the version from the Windows Store because it looks prettier, but you can also do this all from the command line. So you click a new solution. The microservices option is locked because you have to pay for that, but I would normally do, I mean, I guess you can do one of these single layer ones, but I'm generally going to be in the layered world because you're building something that is going to last a while. So you want a little bit, probably something a little bit with more structure to it. I don't know if I'm spelling that correctly. So yeah, I don't know. Curious from the audience, like what are most people using these days? Is it would you go Blazor WebAssembly? Would you go Blazor Server, Angular, MVC Razor Pages? What would you like to see?
Let's see. We got how many people want Angular?
Angular. Okay.
How many people want Blazor? We got 3, 4 for Blazor. Do I hear Blazor? Do I have WebAssembly? Do I hear?
Go on, let's go to
Visual, do it all in Visual Basic. Okay, so it looks like mostly Blazor. Blazor or Angular? Angular? Who's Angular? We got 2. Sorry, Angular's losing. All right. Sold Blazor.
Oh. All right. So they do have support for Mongo. If you are into NoSQL, that is something that works. I can't comment on it all that much. I haven't used it, but that is something that they put in some energy into supporting, so that's cool. I'm interested in Entity Framework Core with SQL Server, so I would do that. Let's see. Oh, hey, they do have other providers. So they ask you for connection string by default. It goes to your MS SQL Local DB instance. So test that, see if that works. Yep, looks good. Click next. So multi-tenancy. Oh my gosh, multi-tenancy is amazing. Does anyone here, actually, I'm curious if anyone actually uses or needs multi-tenancy. It's one of those things that if you need it.
Who knows what multi-tenancy is? We got 5, 6 people. One's not sure. So that's 6.5 people think that they know what it is.
Cool.
Okay, and I know what it is. So 7.5 people know what it is. Do you want to be a whole person? We got 8 people.
Sounds good. Yeah. So if you imagine you have a franchise, for instance, a franchise is a great example. And so you want each of your individual stores, maybe you've got a bookstore franchise that you're selling, and each of your individual stores, you want them to have their own data. They have their own books that are in their store. Each one of them has their own users and their own roles, but they still all have the concept of books, and they all still have the concept of inventory and the same like data structures, but it's the data which is different for every single one of those stores that might log in. So if you ever have a need for that, ABP is amazing. You can put a lot of time and energy into making multi-tenancy work, or you can just use ABP and click this box and it saves so much time. It's fantastic. And I can't remember if I have this in the slides, but there's like 3 different deployment models when you click multi-tenancy. And one of them is you can have all of your schema and database tables in like one database. Or you can alternately split it up so that you have one database for each tenant, which keeps the data much more separate. Or alternately, they have like a hybrid model where you can have like one database where a lot of your customers live, but you could have 1 or 2 of your really big customers, or the ones that like are paying extra, split them out to a separate database. And it's all for very little work. It's a really powerful feature. It's really cool. I'm going to turn that off because it's just a little bit too complicated to try and demo. So the Lepton Lite is really your only option, or you can do basic. I'm going to do Lepton Lite just to show you what that UI looks like. Although I'm going to have a warning for you here in a little bit about Blazor. So hang with me on that about the Lepton Lite with Blazor. So click next. They actually allow you to do mobile apps as well, but you got to pay for that. So if you're interested in a React Native mobile app to go along with it, or a Maui mobile app to go along with it, you can have that. But by default, that is not an option. It's a public website. You can also do that. Also pay for that. So we haven't paid. We're not going to get that. Audit, logging, chat, file management. OpenID Dict UI is, it doesn't mean you can't get OpenID Connect working, but this is like a fancy UI on top of it.
Yeah, I did have a question for you, Lee.
Yeah.
For the mobile framework, when it says that it's Maui, is it Maui Blazor hybrid, or is it like Maui XAML? Because it says what Maui is, but it doesn't say whether it's Maui Blazor hybrid like the ABP 0 uses.
That's a great question. I actually thought that when I was back here, they actually had an option for Maui Blazor hybrid. Yeah, so if you pay for it, you can do the Maui Blazor hybrid option here, but the option for the separate app, which is a mobile app specifically, is then on this page. So the answer is yes, both.
So do we know? Yeah, I'm just wondering if they have like all the XAML built out now, because I know the other version is just Maui Blazor hybrid. So that would be very cool because you would get a fully native app, which would be incredible.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about it, but I have not. I've not fiddled with it. But if you pay for it, I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, we have a question.
You're gonna have to repeat it. I can't hear anything.
So the question is most of his solutions are based in Azure and use Azure SQL. So does this work well with that from a configuration standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All my apps have all been deployed up to Azure. And
Yeah.
it also really works very well with Aspire. So it does not
Mhm.
do .NET Aspire by default, but if you want to add .NET Aspire, and I highly recommend you do, I've got a whole talk on .NET Aspire, then it works quite nicely. And in fact, I'll show you some of the nice integration points in a little bit.
That's something I had to follow up with you on because I think we were looking at presenting that one as well.
Cool.
Yeah. I'll put a note to follow up.
Awesome. It's one of my better talks. This one I realized I hadn't given it in a long time, and I actually had to go back and update everything. And I was like, oh my gosh. So cool. So yeah, localization is built in throughout the entire thing. So as anyone knows who has done localization, if you don't do that up front, it is a pain to add later. So it is really nice that it just works out of the box. You can choose which languages you want. You know, and why not just uncheck everything by default maybe and start with English, and if you needed to add other things you could. That's kind of nice. Personally, most of my projects are corporate internal apps that don't really need localization, so I'd be inclined to turn that off. But or I guess I should say will never use localization, but it's a little bit extra work. It's always it's a trade-off. Turning on a sample CRUD app is kind of useful. You can turn that off. That's going to give you the books. You definitely want to include tests. Why would you not? And modular solution. Oh yeah, so you can do different. You can group your app into different modules, but by default, I don't do that. All right, so you conveniently picked all of the settings that are the same ones that I was hoping you would pick. So I have I could click create right at this point, and you can watch it churn for a little bit, or you could just see the end result. So the end result is I'm going to do Visual Studio if you don't mind, my preferred IDE. It's you might take a look. You might be tempted to take a look at this and be like, "Oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? This looks really like complicated and kind of intimidating." But it doesn't necessarily have to be once you get familiar with it. So if you're doing Blazor, the Blazor app is right here, and that would be your getting started app, unless you add .NET Aspire, and then .NET Aspire App Host would be your starting project. But they didn't give you that out of the box. The other thing that's worth knowing about is the DB Migrator project here. So the DB Migrator is like a command line app, which will do the same thing that you would normally do with a .NET EF database update. So you can do .NET EF, you can still do .NET EF database update if you want to, but they have a nice data seeding feature. And so you can seed your data, and that will be like in Entity Framework rather than in an EF migration. And so that's a really nice feature, but you only get that if you're going to run your DB Migrator project. So I think of this as kind of best practice because a lot of apps will like run the EF upgrades when your main app runs, but then your main app needs to have admin DBO access to your database. So I think this is a little bit cleaner. This is forcing you to separate those two off and probably have your CI/CD pipeline if you're doing automated deployments. It should be the thing which is running the DB Migrator command and targeting your database. So on first run, you need to run this. So I'm going to run the DB Migrator. All right. That's running. And go over here, and it has it's created a new database for me. I can see my EF migrations history over here, so I can see that it ran the initial migration and created permissions, roles, users, settings, claims, user tokens, and then books. So books was the sample thing that I said, please create a sample CRUD app for me. So if I select this, you can see that I have 1984 and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So that was part of the seeding data that occurred. All right. So the Blazor app, let's run that, give you a sense of what's going on there. While that's running and compiling, I'll just show you a couple of the really important projects here. So the application project is perhaps the most important. If this were like a model view controller kind of world, you can think of this as like your controllers. It's similar to an HTTP API. So in your traditional app that was not ABP enabled, you would have like an HTTP API where all your controllers live, and you can still have that. They still have controllers. And so if you are perhaps exposing APIs to some other party, you can write those and you get full control just like you would with a regular HTTP, an HTTP controller over here. However, the application is giving you a slightly higher level of abstraction. So they have a book app service, for instance, and every method that you put in here, like the get async or the get list async, is then exposed out into a Swagger file that then your app can consume. So in this case, I have see that I have the equivalent methods over here. My get book, which was the equivalent of get async. And so I can try this out. Say skip 0, take 10. Oh, yes, it gave me a 401 because I have not authenticated yet. So let's do that. So this was my initial page. Obviously, you'd get rid of all of this stuff. The documentation is absolutely fantastic. So if I were to, there's probably somewhere here, link to some documentation. This is their documentation site. They have a getting started. So if this interests you, definitely check out this tutorial. There's a whole tutorial, and you can go step by step. It's absolutely fantastic. You don't need to buy the book. All of the content that's in the book is available on their website. So there's that. Oops. So I'm going to log in. The default username and password, they give you a admin. And you can look it up, but it's, let's see, 1Q2W3 capital E star is the very first seeded account, I think. There we go. Okay, cool. Now I'm authenticated. I can see that right out of the box, I have gotten the ability to have roles. I can create maybe a supervisor role or whatever. I've got users. I could create a new user. And then I can associate them with admin, or I can create other roles. The roles then have, you can go in here and you have individual permissions. So I could create a new, I could do this through the UI, or I can do this programmatically. I would probably tend to create new roles programmatically rather than doing it through the UI, but you do have the ability to do it here. So you can create a supervisor. You could say that supervisors have the ability to edit books and create books, but not delete books or something like that. I don't know. And you can go over here and say this someone else person over here. I don't want to give them direct permissions. I want to give them roles. I want to give them the supervisor, but not the admin. And then you can go over to the books, and then this is the book page they give you as a sample app. So I can create a new book. I've got an example of how to do drop-down types. They've got these nice date pickers. And validation is a part of this as well. So also out of the box, you get validation. Normally, well, I guess it's not showing for some reason. Oh, it's not working at all. That's interesting. All right, I'm tempted to hit F12 and start debugging this. That might take this down a direction we don't want it to go. But I just refresh. Oh, I hit a breakpoint? Oh, an exception has occurred.
I was just about to say, VS is flashing.
Nice catch. Well done. Thank you. Yeah, I'm curious why that happened. I am a little bit surprised.
Ship it.
1980, yeah. All right. Anyway, 1984 is now 1983. So you get a sense of what you're getting out of the box. You're getting a lot of really good CRUD functionality. So let's see. So yeah, I sort of showed you just the basics. There is this Blazor project. That's the one you start. The application, which is where all of your code comes into. There is, I don't know how much detail to go into. Let's see. There's this application service, which is what you inherit from, and you can create your own, or even better, you can inherit from a CRUD app service. And if you inherit from the CRUD app service and you tell it what your entity is, what your entity DTO is, what your primary key type is. I usually make these ints, but if you're all into doing goods, that works too. What your request DTO type is, and what you can either have a create DTO or an update DTO. You can separate those out, or you can have them combined. Then this is the equivalent of all of this code. So they're showing you how to do it manually, like if you want to write all your own code. And so, it's on like share. I don't know. Do you guys work in SharePoint? We've got a lot of SharePoint users. I feel like one of the great failings of SharePoint was that it put you really high on the stack, right? And didn't give you access to the internals. To like when things started to go wrong, you couldn't go a level of abstraction below. One of the things I really love about ABP is that you're working high on the stack, and you can also get into the internals if you need to. You can override things. You can always fall back to .NET. So that is something that's just really powerful about ABP, I think. Okay. That is, I don't know. Let's see. application. So there's contracts. This is where you would put all your interfaces. So they're a big fan of using interfaces. This is where you put your DTOs. There is, I talked about DB Migrator. The domain is where you would put all of your entities. So there's a book class over here. There is a domain.shared, which is where you would put all of your enums. So if I go to take a look at the book type, they put that in the shared. They have an entity framework core. The entity framework core, they try to hide that from all of your other projects. So if you need to do something like call a store procedure, you're going to need to define an interface, define a custom repository, put that in entity framework core. This is also where your migrations are and where your DB context, is for entity framework. There's an HTTP API. I think I already talked about that. It's if you want to expose external APIs. And then the API.client is kind of neat. I haven't needed to use this yet, but you can generate a custom client that exposes the endpoints in your HTTP API. You can publish that out to like a NuGet store and some other consumer. If you have a third-party library or third-party service that wants to consume your APIs, you can give them this exact, and their .NET, you can consume this exact project, which is kind of neat. And then there's all the tests. Okay, so that's a real quick overview. I'm going to go back to the slides. Any questions before I go back to slides? Nope. Okay. Cool. Well, I mean, I think after first week, I think you probably are going to have a boss, which is like, wow, you built an enormous amount of functionality extremely fast, and you can be like, yeah, I mean, you could admit that you're standing on the shoulders of giants, or you could just go ahead and own that and be like, yeah, because I'm kind of awesome. So I'd maybe do the latter. So yeah, week one benefits, bunch of foundational features, a bunch of pre-implemented best practices, dependency injection and logging, domain-driven design architecture. That was part of the GUIDs. So if you're really into DDD, domain-driven design, you're going to use GUIDs for reasons that I won't get into. There's a Deborah Kurata Pluralsight course, which if you're interested, I highly recommend the Deborah Kurata domain-driven design Pluralsight course. It's fantastic. And then the documentation. And I think the documentation is really an especially powerful part, because if you have new employees that are joining your project, you can point them back to the documentation on the ABP site. Actually, I closed that, but you can point them back to that documentation, and you're getting a whole bunch of free documentation about your architecture and how they can get started on your project for free. And that is really powerful. And then within the first month, so this was a site that I built, and I built this in ABP, and I made it a little bit more, hid the name of the client, but we built this really, really fast. It is a relatively pretty site, but you can customize. You can kind of tell it's ABP if you squint at it, but it was something that we were able to build very, very fast because we were using all of these best practices. So month one benefits, you're getting an enterprise grade architecture, getting great documentation and enterprise consistency. All right, so those are the benefits. Let's start talking about the actual features that you're getting. That's where the fun stuff happens. On the front end side of things, it's really hard to talk about the front end side of things because there's those 3 or 4 different, depending on how you look at it, different front ends. So I'm going to try and sort of jump around between the front ends and talk about some of the benefits that you're getting across all of the front ends. Although the first one I'm going to talk about here is UI helpers, which is actually very specific to ASP.NET Core MVC Razor. But if you are into ASP.NET Core MVC Razor, there's these tag helpers, which I haven't done ASP.NET Core MVC Razor in such a long time. I don't actually remember how helpful this would be, but it seems like it's really cool. They talk about this and it sounds really nice. So you just say, I want an ABP input, and it goes and uses your attributes, your data annotation attributes, and figures out what the data type is. If you specify data type, it figures out what the hint is. If you put a hint on there, or the name, and it just exposes all of those with the UI and the editing if you want it to. So that ends up rendering like that. That works really nicely, apparently. And then if you want to just like skip all of the ABP inputs for individual fields, you can just do one of these ABP dynamic forms and it'll do everything. They've got data tables. If you're an Angular, I'm glad we had some hands raised for Angular. They use NGX data table, and then they give you pagination, filtering, and sorting that's built in with the NGX data table. And that ends up rendering like this. I sort of showed you, I didn't get to show you the pagination, but there's pagination there out of the box as well. So, those are all features which it's not, terrible to code this yourselves, but it sure is nice when your framework just makes it easy for you. If you're using Blazor, which I am and I have been for several years now. I'm deep into Blazor. Blazor is Blazor. Then you get the Blazor data grid. So this is the big gotcha that I got to warn you about. So we're on my project. We're big into Blazor. Originally, Blazor was free, and everything was wonderful, and it was free and open source. And now, about a year ago, they switched from being free and open source to being open source and free for individuals. But if you're a corporation, if you make money, they change their licensing so that you have to pay. And I think the bait and switch there took a lot of people by surprise, and I think it took the ABP folks by surprise. And I would love to tell you that they have a solution to get off of Blazor, but if you click on this hyperlink right here, and you can follow this discussion, you'll see that ABP has not committed to switching Blazor out for MudBlazor or any of the other Blazor component libraries. Microsoft's got component libraries now too, which are quite powerful. I think they've invested so much time and energy that they're like, I don't know. It's a little bit disappointing. So if you are using Blazor, you need to be aware of this. When you're making that decision, you might choose to not go with a Lepton-X theme, instead go with the like default theme, which I think is going to be really ugly, but then at least you won't be tied into Blazor. So
Question about that though, Lee. If they switch the license, they can only switch the license going forward, right? So can you use older versions of Blazor still under the same license?
yeah, I mean, I think, it's a good point. I think that's probably true. Although I about guarantee you, if I go take a look at the version of Blazor, which is in here, it's probably, I think, 1.8, 1.9 or whatever, which I think was part of so you'd have to downgrade it. And I don't know how hard that would be how to do.
I know I've had a lot of luck with Radzen. Yeah, they're 1.7.
Okay.
Because they might not even be allowed to include it if the license changed.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. In that case, yeah, probably, if I were to go to packages, it would probably say you should upgrade this, and I guess then the answer is don't. Cool.
Ship it.
Ship it. Yeah. There you go. They have a whole bunch of really nice modals. So there's a nice little this is in the over on the left is in the Angular world, this .confirm.war, and it pops up. It looks relatively pretty. There's a similar equivalent one that you can do in Blazor. There's an UI notification service that you can inject, and then you can call .success on that and pop things up, and that's really nice. I can't remember if this is going to be shown later. I'm pretty sure it is in the presentation, but you can also, if you're in the back end, you can throw a new HTTP friendly exception on the back end, and it'll propagate up through into your UI and pop up in a dialog like that, which can be really, really convenient if you just need to display a message to the user and you don't want to deal with all of the, stuff of traditionally doing stuff like that. That's
and it's
nice.
Localized.
Yes. Yes. And
it's localized. If you localize it.
True story. Yep. Yeah, that was an example of the localization right there. Yeah. We're going to talk about localization right now. So if you get all of these .json files, you could probably use Copilot or some kind of an AI to translate your en.json file into all those other files, maybe. I don't know how that works. I've never done it, but it seems like something you could probably do. And then if you are in an Angular world, you just squiggle, and then pipe it through ABP localization, and then it localizes for you on the front end. And on the back end, there's you can get dependency injection. You can inject an I localization, something or other. Or if you are in, let's see. Yeah, okay. And if you are in Blazor, then you can at L if you at inject this iString localizer as L. So that would be how to do that in Blazor. All right, in terms of security, so they are all built on ASP.NET Core Identity. And then for very little effort, they do have support for OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect. So on my current project, we have ABP hooked up to Azure, to an Azure, what's it called? They renamed it. It used to be called
Entra ID.
Entra. That's it. Yes. So yeah, we connected back to an Entra backend, and it was not terrible. I mean, authentication is never easy or fun, but it wasn't too bad. So that is definitely possible. They have routing and authorization if you're in the Angular world. So here's an example of your routes, and let's see. Load children, products of module. Been a while since I've read Angular. Static component. Oh yeah, can activate through the auth guard, the permissions guard. So that double checks that you can actually go places with your routes. And okay, yeah. So the permissions is brought. So I'm gonna get into all of this in much more detail later when I get into the back end side of things. But it's all brought through into the front end as well. All right, we talked about multi-tenancy already. This is kind of what it looks like to switch tenants. There's a button to switch tenants. You can do that. And one of the things that's really cool on the back end is if you inherit any of your entities from iMulti-tenant, then you get a tenant ID. And then this entity, in this case, a product, now becomes specific to each one of your tenants. So if you have a bunch of different stores, each one of them will have their own product, and you don't have to do any extra work other than just making an iMulti-tenant. It just works, and it keeps track of if this was created within the context of one tenant, and it keeps track of the ambient tenant, the ambient logged in tenant. So whichever tenant happens to be logged in, it'll populate that into the tenant ID, and if a user in that tenant creates a product, it automatically will only ever be associated with that tenant, and no other tenants will be able to see it, which is wonderful. And yeah, when I clicked that checkbox when I was doing
There's a question too.
wizard earlier, it just clicked that. Yeah, go ahead.
So for this tenancy thing, does this, I guess when you select whether it's a multi-tenant application in the beginning, does the code generator create a different schema to support the links between products and tenants?
No, I don't think it does. I think all it does is just change line 9 of this Boolean right here. I think that's all it does. It just saves you from having to go find it. Did that answer your question?
Maybe. I'd have to think through it, but it seems to me that the nature of multi-tenancy involves having a schema that has the support for those relationships.
Oh yeah. So what he was talking about earlier is if you in your entities you inherit from iMulti-tenant, it automatically adds the tenant ID to all the entities. And then anytime you do an insert, because you don't use just regular EF, you use their repository. So you have like a repository instance, and then you say get all, and then it's a slightly different pattern. And it will handle all the multi-tenancy inserts for you automatically.
Okay.
And then in all the controllers, when it says you can inherit from application service, it already knows not only the current user ID, but also the tenant that's currently being used. So all of that comes in for free. quote unquote. And yeah, there's a bunch more to it, like API proxies and all this stuff that are already auto-generated for you. But yeah, to answer your question, multi-tenancy is almost automatic.
That was a great description. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, follow-up question.
Follow-up question on that. Do you know if when using SQL servers, the private provider, is it using discriminators in the background to help make sure that that's enforced?
Did you hear that?
There's a couple of words that didn't come through.
Oh, is it using discriminators in the background if you use SQL Server to enforce the multi-tenant?
Or is it all at the application level?
Or is it all at the application level?
I think it's using, I thought it's using EF filters. Isn't EF filters the way it determines whether or not, so like when you're doing querying for all products, it will only show you the products for your current tenant, and it uses the same facility that it does for like iDeletable, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But that goes in through the entity framework filter.
Yeah.
Okay, so all at the application layer then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which that would make sense given it supports multiple database solutions. So let's EF handle all that.
Yeah.
Because behind the scenes, everything's entity framework, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I haven't used Mongo, but I believe it uses EF with Mongo. Because
So you
EF does
can-
support it now.
You can optionally segregate the databases. So if you do multi-tenant, you have the option to keep all the data in a single database or in multiple databases with a master database that, you know, points to which has what. And I've seen that implemented because we use ABP all the time. Although we use ABP 0, but yeah, very similar.
Cool. All right. So it's a little bit more multi-tenancy. If you are using Angular, there's an auto-generated service proxy that you get. So it exposes Swagger with Swashbuckle. And then let's see, if you do the .NET tool install, the way it used to work is you would run ABP generate proxy. I think this is probably still true. And then it generates a products.service.ts. Models.ts. It generates a whole bunch of TypeScript, and then you include that, and they get regenerated, and it makes calling into your backend substantially easier. And yeah, and then that's how you would consume something. This product service.get subscribe. Yep, that looks like the Angular I remember. It's been a while. All right, let's get into the backend features. That's where things get much more interesting. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of a sample application service and point out some of the interesting things here. So this is a products app service. So first thing is, I mentioned this a little bit during my demo, but this is inheriting from a CRUD app service. And so you're getting optional free CRUD, which can be very helpful, but it's optional. You don't have to. They set up dependency injection for you. It's automatically set up such that if you have an interface, they use, I can't remember what they use actually off the top of my head, but if you have an interface and an entity who have the same name, that it just is automatically set up for you. You do have to inherit from you have to either inherit from one of their services, such as the CRUD app service or the application service, or you can extend transient dependency, which is the thing you would do most of the time, or they probably have other scopes. So if you wanted like a singleton, they probably have that, although I'm not a big fan of singletons because that's a great way to lose memory.
Do they still use Castle Windsor? I think that's what they're using.
They were, that's right, Castle Windsor. Yeah, I don't think they are anymore.
Okay.
But I can't remember what it is now. Tempted to go look it up. Repository pattern. Big fan of repository patterns. It makes everything very unit testable, and that's really nice. And there is a declarative authorization up here, so you can annotate with authorize, and then you're specifying a permission. In this case, the view edit products permission. There's validation. I'm going to get into validation in more detail later, but if you have one of these DTO entities, you can put custom validation on it, and it'll validate on both the front end and when you call into the app service.
Is this the controller effectively?
It's the equivalent of a controller,
Gotcha.
a more powerful controller. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep. There is audit logging, which happens automatically. So every single call gets stored into the database, and it gets very big, very fast. But you can turn that off. There is logging set up for you, and it uses it used to be Log4net, and then they changed it to Serialog. So it is so they set up Serialog for you by default. Everything is unit of work enabled. So if there's transactions just like you would expect in connection management. So if an exception, let's say, I can't start the line number, but right here where we're doing throw this user-friendly exception. I was talking about user-friendly exceptions earlier, where they just like propagate up to the UI and make a nice little dialogue to the user. But anytime any exceptions get thrown, whether they're user-friendly exceptions or argument out of range exceptions or whatever, they automatically roll back the transaction, so you don't have to worry about doing any extra work. The unit of work is there set up for you and works. Let's see what else. Talked about the exception management already. Talked about localization. There is it uses AutoMapper. So I've got mixed feelings about AutoMapper, but it certainly. Also, there's also a question about licensing for AutoMapper, isn't there? I saw recently that AutoMapper is going to a commercial license, so I don't know if that's going to be a concern.
That was another big brouhaha.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it would. I mean, I don't think AutoMapper is all that complicated, really, at the end of the day. So there's probably going to be a fork. You could probably use the fork. You could probably write it yourself if you had to. It wouldn't be that complicated.
Yeah. Plus, again, I don't think they can retroactively change the license. They can only move forward. So you would get the old version of AutoMapper, but you wouldn't get any of the new features and support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly right. It's true. All right, let's look a little bit about the way they did authorization. So there's tenant multi-tenancy throughout all of this, but I'm just going to gloss over that and talk about users, roles, and permissions. So I showed you creating a user earlier, and I showed you creating a role earlier, and I showed you changing the roles that are associated with a user earlier. And what I didn't show was how to create your own custom permissions. So imagine you are creating a new entity called products that's similar to books. I don't know. And you want to you want to make a permission which allows people to. This is weird. Did I call it a view edit products permission? Okay. So suppose you want to view and edit products. It's a fancy new permission where you can do two things at once. Yeah, I think normally you would just do view or edit. So you can define that in the permission definition provider there. And gotta zoom in. And then once you've defined it there, then you can use an authorize attribute on the app service on either the class level or on the methods, and then ABP handles for you, ensuring that the currently logged in user has those permissions. That's what it works at the app service level, and you can also check it in the UI tier if you want to. Okay, that is authorization. As far as validation, so they support data annotation attributes throughout, so you can I think no matter which front end you're using, they have some kind of a solution for exposing the data annotation attributes as validators in the UI. And then additionally, when you call into the app service, they check all of those again. So it's really nice to have your authentication at 2 layers. And then additionally, if you have any more complex validation that you want to do, you can put it into your data transfer objects, into your DTOs. And I don't know, did we talk about why they do DTOs? Talk about overposting attacks. So in case you, yeah, so in case you're not familiar about DTOs, there's a variety of reasons that you would architecturally not want to expose your entities directly through through a controller or an app service or whatever. For one thing, it's real easy for if you're just like saving it and you add a new property and you've got a save endpoint. If someone could customize a JSON payload which takes your new property that you didn't even intend to expose and then sets it. So you don't necessarily have near as much control when you are directly using your entities. If you have a DTO, then and you add something new, you have to make sure to add it both to your entity and also to your DTO, so you can prevent against these like overposting attacks. And also, it's really easy to accidentally expose if you have a product that can have inventory events or something like that. It's really easy to accidentally expose the navigation properties. And so you really don't want to expose navigation properties. You want to just try and keep things flattened. And so those are benefits of having this DTO layer of abstraction. So this is a DTO. You can extend from you can extend from iValidatable object, and if you do that, then you have to implement the validate method, and then you can write your own custom code here, and then that gets ABP will automatically run that when anyone calls into the app service. Then, in this case, quantity must be under 10. Quantity must be under 10 is exposed to the user. So that is validation. As far as auditing is, oh man, auditing is one of the sweetest features of ABP. I'm a huge fan. So if you extend, well, there's a bunch of different options of things you can extend from. In this case, I'm extending from an audited aggregate root. And if you extend from audited aggregate root, then you have to have a, if you extend from audited aggregate root, then you have to make a creator, a creation time, a modified by, and a last modification time. If you extend from the abstract class, the audited aggregate root, then those are, you get those for free. You don't have to define them. So that's what I did in this example. And when you, using the repository pattern, like Ari, am I pronouncing your name right? Ari? Or, should probably have clarified that front.
It's all good.
Okay. Like you were talking about earlier. So when you use that repository pattern and you don't need to set the creator ID, you don't need to set the creation time, you don't need to set the modified by or the modification time. Those ABP automatically sets all of those for you when you use the repository. And so you can see here we've got some GUIDs which are automatically set to the user who was the creator, who was the user who was modification time. And if you were to like pair that up with temporal tables, then you can get a complete audit history of every person who modified every single field, which would be really cool. Similarly, you can also extend from iSoft delete or inherit from full audited aggregate root. And in addition to the creation time and modification time, there is also now a deleter, deletion time, and is deleted, which get put onto your entity. And here's where it gets cool. They combine that with the filter feature of Entity Framework. So if you call into your repository and you delete an item, then it will set the deleter, the person who deleted, and the deletion time, and the is deleted. And every single time you query any products, even though it exists in the database, it will be filtered out. And so you won't be able to tell, like it'll effectively have been deleted for you with no extra effort, but it's actually been soft deleted, and it's soft deleted and still in the database. If for some reason you still need to be able to get back your deleted items, then you have the ability to you get a data filter. So you can ask through dependency injection for an iData filter, and then you can data filter.disable your soft delete, and then any queries you run within this block here will return your soft deleted items as well as everything else. There's a similar data filter for multi-tenancy as well. You can disable multi-tenancy to retrieve other tenants' data if you needed to for some reason. Just a little word of warning, if you are using this and you're not familiar with it, they do sort of best practices even in the dev environment. So you're going to get a little dialogue if there is an unhandled exception in your backend, which pops up and says an internal error occurred during your request. So they do not, even in development mode, expose stack traces or error messages or any of those kinds of things. And that's nice. As a dev getting started, it is a little bit weird. It's like, where do I get my stack trace? Where do I get my message from? The answer is the logs. So if you use something like Beartail, I'm a fan of this project. It'll just keep like a running, it'll just tail a file. So you can tail your logs.txt. So the logs by default get plunked out. It's totally configurable. You can change whatever you want to do with your logs, but this is just what happens by default. By default, they put it into source, app host, and logs/logs.txt. And I think it's like a rolling, they do like a rolling log. Note that you, yeah, so that's where it goes to. And note that they also plunk in all of your, this is really fuzzy, but they plunk in all of your SQL queries that Entity Framework is doing too. So if you need to figure out why your app is performing slowly, you could, it's data that's there. A whole bunch of miscellaneous things they have. I mean, I feel like I've just barely touched the surface. There is so much to ABP. It's really huge, and it's kind of intimidating to even give a presentation on it because there's just so much stuff. So there's a SignalR capability that you can turn on if you need to have a chat capability or something like that, or you want to be able to like send notifications down to all your customers that you're about to restart the server or something like that. You can use SignalR. They have it like partially set up. It's relatively easy. They've got a background job capability set up. You can use something like Hangfire if you want to use Hangfire. They have like that's really easy to plug in, but it's pluggable, so you can use other background job services as well. They have an event bus. It makes it really easy to do event bus. I don't have personal experience with having used the event bus, but they use RabbitMQ for that. I talked about data seeding. Modules there's a whole piece about modules, which I don't know that you need to get into as much when you're getting started, but just so you know, every project has usually one module, and the module is like when the app is starting, you have the ability to tie into pre-configure services and post-configure services. You can do dependency injection, changes to your dependency injection. You can configure things. The Blazor module is configuring all of your Blazor stuff, but each one of your projects has one of these. So if for some reason you have some code specific to your application and you want to be able to specify this is a module, and there's dependencies between modules. So there's a whole bunch of flexibility you have for customizing your DI, for example. Let's see, they've got text templating, virtual file systems, great for unit testing, very, very unit testing friendly. All right. Deploying is really straightforward. I mean, you deploy just like you would deploy a regular app. And if you were to use Aspire, then you plug in Aspire, and it'll deploy up to an Azure. I deploy to an Azure App Service on my project, but if you were to use Aspire, you get deployment to Azure Container Apps, I think. So you deploy up to Azure Container Apps, and that's really straightforward and easy to do. Talked about the migrator. You'd need to hook that up into your CI/CD process. Testing, another really powerful feature they put in. I should give you a word of warning. Like this, it's really powerful the way that they do this. They give you an in-memory database, so all of your tests, they will, each one of them by default spins up in in-memory MySQL database, I think, and has DI. So you're getting basically like integration tests, which is really powerful. And you can test your queries if you've got any kind of complex queries you're doing against your back end. That's great. But I should warn you, the first time I used ABP on a project several years ago, I didn't really give a lot of thought to performance, and these things are slow. And so once we got like a couple thousand of these integration tests, and every single one of them spins up in my SQL database and then spins it back down when it's done, it's really slow. So I would just warn you, maybe go a little light, just like you would on any unit testing world. Go a little light maybe on your integration tests and go much heavier on your unit tests. But they do lead you down a little bit. They lead you down the path of doing integration tests. And so you have to do a little bit of work to set it up for unit tests, true unit tests. They use end substitute. So if you were expecting moke, it's different. And substitute's fine. I like it. I don't really care that much. Shouldly? Do you guys like Shouldly? I use that on your unit tests. Shouldly fans?
Who uses Shouldly? Nope.
No, not so much.
Nope.
Well, you should. It's wonderful. It just makes your unit tests like super readable. So this is just one example, but exception.message.shouldbe. Because I don't know, when I look at tests, the traditional tests, which are like assert, comma, are equal, like I always lose track of which one is the like expected and which one is the actual. Like is expected first or is actual first? I always forget. But Shouldly just makes it like really easy to remember and read. So big fan of that. All right, integration tests. We've talked about that. How-tos, if you don't use their, adding a new entity is a little bit of work. You have to add the entity, add it to the database context, add it to the on model creating in the DB context to tell it how things map. Then you have to add a migration. You maybe need to seed your data. You run your data migrator project. Then you add an app service. Maybe you add some permissions. You add your DTOs. You define your auto mapper mappings, you register your permissions, and then you run an app, and then you see Swagger, and then your backend's all working, and yay, you rejoice. That may sound like a lot of work. Presumably Copilot would make this substantially faster and easier because it's a lot of ceremony, but it's worth it because you're getting a really good architecture out of it. And then your front end depends on whether you're doing Angular or whether you're doing Blazor, but if you're doing Angular, you have to regenerate your proxies, add a module, update your routing, update your navigation. Maybe you duplicate one of their existing projects, and then to basically do a find and replace with your entity, and then you fix fields and tidy up your UI, and then you rejoice. So maybe that sounds like a lot, but it really is worth it. It is a really great framework. I'm a big fan. So final thoughts. I don't know if you guys have heard of Parkinson's law of triviality, but it is basically when members of an organization give disproportionate weight to trivial issues, also known as bike shedding or missing the forest through the trees. I think it's really easy to do this when you start using ABP, when you start looking at the way they do things, and you're like, oh, why did they use 4 spaces instead of 3? Or, why did they, do this or do that? There's definitely going to be things you're not going to love about ABP, but I think it's important to just take a step back and remember all the stuff that you're getting. You're getting localization, pagination, sorting, UI helpers, data tables, proxy generation, login, authentication, authorization, multi-tenancy. Multi-tenancy, if you're using that, it's absolutely just worth it just for that alone. As far as testing, the in-memory database testings, the database migrator is kind of nice for helping out with data seeding. domain-driven design-based classes and AutoCRUD server-side validation, data annotations, with custom validator, the user-friendly exception. That's such a nice little feature. Auto mapping mapper is all auto set up for you. Modules can be really handy. Dependency injection set up for you. Auditing, soft delete, repository pattern transactions, logging, data seeding, SignalR potentially, background jobs, virtual file system, all that stuff. You're getting just a ton of stuff. It is really a fantastic product, and I do recommend it. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, there's still lots more that I could probably try to answer for you. So thank you all for coming out tonight. If you are interested, actually, incidentally, quick plug, tomorrow night, if you're interested in going over to San Diego, which I don't necessarily recommend, but they're also virtual. I'm giving a brand new presentation for them, which is going to be on Copilot. So that's yeah. So if that interests you.
Send me the link to that. Yeah,
Yeah,
send me
yeah.
the link. I'll post it, and then I'll tell people at the office about it too.
Cool. Yeah, shit. It's all about the new fancy doing autonomous coding. So should be good.
Yeah, that'd be great. Does anyone have any questions? No? We've learned everything there is to learn. Yeah? Sweet. I love it when things work out that way. Well, thanks, Lee. That was awesome. Yay.
Hey, thank you, Ari.
All right. So we'll let you go. Thanks. Hopefully we can talk about that Aspire presentation maybe in a couple months.
Yeah, man.
Maybe you can do the Copilot presentation next year. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
I'd love
right on.
to-
Oh my gosh, that stuff is changing so fast. It's going to be completely different whenever you chose to give it. It's going to be all brand new.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, thank you, sir, and we'll talk with you soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good night.
Cool.